Hi, book club members. I'm Jen.
And I'm Carrie.
And this is Warhammer 40k Book Club, where we read from a crag. This is episode number 73, and our book is Katachan Devil by Justin Woolley? I'm guessing? It's not Woolley? Woolley? I don't know. The book is about the Catachan, the infamous Catachan 57th Jungle Fighters, as they drop onto a planet besieged by orcs. We posted several questions on our website, WH40kbookclub.com, and we encourage participation in our conversations via Twitter, our site, or Encrypted Vox channel. Spoiler warning. If you haven't yet read the book, definitely check out the book and our post before listening to this episode, as we're going to discuss the book from start to finish in great detail. Not that there's a ton of spoilers in this one per se. But with that, let's dive in. As always, did you like the book?
I had a great time with this book. It was fun.
Yeah, that's a really good way to describe it. I had a lot of fun with it. I have mixed feelings on the ending, which we'll talk about later. Yeah, I don't know how I feel about that one, but I did have fun with it. The Catachan, it's basically like if you took the group from the first Predator movie and John Rambo from Rambo 2, not Rambo 1. And then threw in a little bit of Australia because reasons.
Either that or they're Amazon, I'd think.
No, that would do too, yeah. Just a place where people have a devil may care attitude. And a lot of jungles.
A lot of jungles.
A lot of jungle. What part stood out to you?
It's really hard to say, like, if anything in particular stood out. I think a lot of the orc logic discussions stood out.
Oh my gosh,
how they
yes.
took some English sayings and how they, warped it because they don't know the words. Like, I wrote down one because I laughed so hard. It was, the elephant of surprise. Like, well, an elephant would be surprising.
That would be surprising.
Although I think the start that really stood out though was when the Catachan had lured all the orcs out and then they set off the mines. They talked about how they had different explosions that just kept going and going. I actually had the ending scene from Caddyshack going off in my head when that happened, complete with John Philip Sousa in the background.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And the little gopher dancing. That would be an orc, though.
It would be an orc. Mm-hmm.
It would be an orc dancing. That scene was great. It was very cinematic. You could really imagine it. My scene that was similar to that is when the orcs were charging them in the beginning, and he talks about how they're all firing their guns. And he's like, well, the Catachan, all of our guns basically sound the same. Torvin's is standard issue, so it's different. And he's like, not a single one of the orcs sounds the same. The only thing they have in common is like they're big, they're loud, and more than they need to be.
Right.
It just cracked me up. And I loved when he was talking about when he got his Catachan knife when Nogrok got it back. And the orc logic and the amount of times they use the phrase fair enough. Because it just, when he's going through the orc code, right? It's like, okay, the guy took my knife and I killed him to get it back. Fair enough. His boss is angry. Fair enough. But when he's going through, like, he wants to try and take revenge. That's not really cool right now. And then, like, when they would talk about, like, oh, well, somebody died, so he's taking his place. Fair enough. Like, the number of ways that they just, like, rationalize their just sheer bloodiness and wawness cracked me up. I just love the orcs, guys.
When they're not charging at you anyway.
I did like how effectively, when you're reading Nogrok's chapters, he's funny and he's charming in an orcish way.
Right.
And you're like kind of rooting for him because he's like, no. Tactics is the way to go. Oh, okay. Yeah, sure, friend. And you're like,
I just love
so
the
funny.
way that they spell tactics because you can hear that spelling. It's not just like, just tactics. No, it's tactics. Very hard.
Tactics.
Yeah, tactics.
Well, actually, I say all of their stuff with the K's, like commandos. It's not commandos, it's commandos.
Right.
Like everything, because I read these aloud to my husband, and every time I come to a word that has a K randomly inserted, I always have to like it. Very satisfying, actually. When you're saying it aloud, like tactics. Very satisfying. It invokes that same satisfaction when you drop the F word because it's so harsh. But I loved all of that, and I loved like how like, oh, he's so cool, and then like there's that scene when he kills that Catachan and takes his head back to
Right.
prove himself to Gut Stompa. Oh, thank you for reminding me they're terrifying
Right.
and that he's only funny to an extent.
He's funny with the other orcs.
Right. As an orc, humorous. As an enemy of mankind, no. No, thank you.
You know, and they kept talking about how their forces kept getting depleted because of the way that Gutnapa would just, throw orcs. So when the feral orcs came in, and even Torvin talked about the green tide. It's like, yes, this is what we're used to seeing. Is they always talk about it's just like this wave of green just kind of coming over the hills. You can almost like see it.
Right. It oh man, we'll talk more about the feral orcs in a bit because that was a whole thing. I
didn't know there was such a thing. That was new to me.
Oh yes. We'll get there. Because that was a fun thing. Did you like the Catachan? Did you like, how do they compare to like other because we've read books about Cadians, we've read books about the Krieg. I'm going to go ahead and throw, because we've seen some people who were from Fenris, like we have read about so many Death World people. What'd you feel about the Catachan?
Well, the Catachan, they kind of remind me a lot of the Cadians, and just in how, the thing is, Cadians weren't really from a Death World, not really. They just lost their planet, and they're a little bitter, and they don't think anyone's as good as them because they were that
right at the Eye of Terror.
But it wasn't like a death planet, like you're talking about, like the Krieg. Like you literally can't live on that planet; it's impossible. So they live underground, and they're not really born. So the Catachan was just them talk. They could really have the haughtiness of the Cadians. Like no one will ever understand how hard we have it, how great we are, and everyone's just they're trying to be as awesome as us. They remind me a lot of, especially in Steel Tread, that book.
Steel Tread. How
those Cadians treated their new commander. With everything is like, what she knows, she's never really seen like real combat or blah blah, whatever. That's kind of how they reminded me a bit, but at the same time, unlike the Cadians, the Cadians rubbed me the wrong way. At least with the Catachan, like they could put their money where their mouth is.
My favorite scene is when it's replicated in the beginning and in the end, is when Aldalon, when he first goes in and he's just addressing the Major General like very casually, and Commissar Redvin is like, excuse you? And he just looks at her and is like, I've been excused. Anyway, it's like, it's the Catachan. They are, for all intents and purposes, they're the closest thing to like the human version of the Astartes, where they know their reputation, they know that people are scared of them, they know that people hold them in this spot of reverence. And like in the end, when he walks in and he's just like, and he looks at the commissar and is just like, you have to excuse me for a second. Like, but you're right. They're like, we are very arrogant. We are very brash. We are very, don't bother us because we're from a death world. And then they back it up. They are, my favorite speech of his is when when Aldalon's kind of watching Torvin in about the middle of the book. He's watching Torvin and he's just like, how the hell is the Imperium still running? Oh, right. Because of people like us. You guys are just cannon fodder. Damn, son.
He actually had and I wish I'd written them down, but he actually had a lot of really interesting insights to how the Imperium worked. And one thing I loved about reading from Torvin's point of view, honestly, that primer he had was It was hysterical because that's totally the crap the Imperium buys. And part of it is like they kind of have to buy it because otherwise, no one's going to do their tithing. But maybe they shouldn't. Like, what are you guys doing? it's. It, I mean,
Part
I'm
that for that
actually.
one that cracked me up was the thing about how like, oh, orcs aren't as strong as human beings. You'll just have to rush up there and charge them. And I was
Yeah. I mean,
did they keep a straight face when they wrote that?
I was like, even Torvin said that, when he was reading it and like the veterans would come by and be like, okay, please. He's like, oh, maybe they don't, maybe this isn't accurate. Like he had, really like no idea. And,
Right.
also probably another part that I thought was humorous was when like Adelon's like, why are you stuffing so much crap in your pack? And he makes comment about that, that Torvin's getting better about it. And he's like, at least this time he's not, he realizes you don't need an extra pair of underwear. He's like, well, maybe the Imperial troops do. Like, funny.
Actually really liked the phrase. It's in the very last chapter. It's when he bursts into the door and he said that Planetary Governor Missum and Major General Nillum stared wide-eyed and pale with their posture of two men who had unexpectedly answered their daily call of nature. That's the best phrase for shitting yourself I've ever heard. But to your point, yes, I loved, reminded me of that because of the underwear thing. But I loved when like the scene with like the ration tins, right? When he's just like, oh yeah, we've never eaten those. And Aladulon is just constantly like, you don't need that. And like when he crushes the flashlight. And when you think about it, I understand why you needed a flashlight, but like it just shows how poor this training is
Right.
for these people, right? That it never even occurred to him that, oh yeah, it's nighttime in a jungle and we're sneaking up on orcs. Maybe not. Maybe not right now. It
Well,
just, they were fun.
well, the pack always came around. Whether it was like it was clanky, he actually stood up too quickly and he fell over backwards because the pack was so heavy. And I felt like I was actually getting like I was back in high school reading Moby Dick and finding symbolism in the fucking wave droplets again. But with the pack is like the mark of the Imperium, like of that weight on the back. How unnecessary is all of that?
Right. Well, and just, again, it reminded me, so there's a really great scene where Torvin is like, oh, like, he's talking about his life before he was tithed. And Aldelon is like, you exist to kill Xenos. And yeah, that is basically as an imperial citizen. Once you get drafted into the Imperial Guard, you exist to kill the enemies of the Emperor. That is it. You are not a person. You don't really have a personality anymore. You exist to kill stuff. And I did like when, of course, he follows it up when he's just like, the only things you love are the Emperor and a fresh las pack. That's amazing. But yeah, it is. There was a lot of that like symbolism and commentary, but subtly. Not
At the
like
same time,
down your
though,
throat.
when you find out that Sappa is his daughter, I kind of thought that was hypocritical at the same time. It's like, you're there telling him that he has no right to think back on this fiance he had, but you had a family. So
I don't get the impression they were a close family. But yes, you're right. So let's jump ahead a little bit to say, like, let's talk about Aldelon in general. Was he a good commanding officer? Did you like him? His style?
I did.
I did too. And I actually really liked the thing with his son and his daughter, because you got the impression that Sappa wasn't getting a whole lot of shortcuts. Because, like, when he said, he's like, if anything, I trained my kids harder. Right? But I liked it, kind of humanized him.
Which is kind of funny because you think in contrast to the Volpone, that they might get a little more, depending on who you are, because it's the nobility who are in the Volpone anyway. But depending on which family you are, how much higher up you are, maybe you can like push ahead with some of your. It was that your promotions or whatever. Where at the Catachan, not so much.
Not so much. But I did like that it really did humanize him. It made him this, like, yes, he's this unstoppable killing machine, right? And he's got a big old power fist and he exists to kill Xenos. But he does care about his family. And he admits, he's just like, losing my son shook me. Mm-hmm. And I found that interesting. I also found it interesting where, I mean, he says, he's like, oh, I actually do care about my kids. Now, one has to wonder, would he have cared that strongly about his kids if they weren't badass fighters?
I have a feeling that if you're not a badass fighter, you don't survive.
Pretty much.
In Catachan. So it's like you're either a badass fighter or Darwinism. Get you. One of the two. It's literally much, survival of the fittest.
Pretty much. I mean, it's a death world. I think about the Krieg book that we just read where they were talking about like, oh, well, what do civilians do? And there are no civilians on Krieg. I kind of imagine.
Here's your shovel.
Yes, exactly. The Catachan, I feel like the Catachan are kind of similar.
You're bored. Here's your knife.
Here's your badass knife.
That's probably as long as a baby is, but
all I could think about that too, and I hate to be this person, but it's because I'm of a certain age and I'm of a certain pop culture.
Let me guess. That's ain't a knife.
That's a knife.
This is a knife.
Well, especially because Nogrock was like, oh, no, I want that knife back. That's the best knife. Like, oh man. But did you like how he kind of warmed up to Torvin over the books? Over the story, I should say, not books, plural.
Yeah, but I don't think it was, like, out of character either, because Torvin actually, like, is really kind of interesting, because they were all kind of training him in a way. They all broke him down in their own way, kind of like how their world would have broken them down to a point he just had it. Like, when Fletcher was just like, I'm going to kill you because of what happened to my friends. He's like, okay, fine, just do it. And Fletcher's like, whoa, maybe we have something here. Yeah, where he's just snaps. He's just, fine, just kill me. Just get it over with. It's either going to be by you or the jungle or an orc. So just get it over with. Or shut up. Like, one of the two.
Right.
Stop calling
leave me alone.
Yeah, stop calling me soft world, or stop beating me up about stuff. Just do it. And so at that turn, and even when like he attacked Fletch, actually pulled out a knife, and Aldalon stopped it and says, we don't pull our knives on one another. Right then is where Aldalon turned around on him, because he realized that this guy was just like, look, like, you just totally insulted me and you came at me. So, as far as he knows, so Aldalon, he's like, well, if he was going to kill you, he would have. Well, but he also knows Torvin wouldn't have known that.
Well, but I liked when Torvin was like, well, he was going to kill me. And Aldalon's like, he didn't look like the one who was trying to kill the other person. And walks off, right?
Right.
But I think you're right. Like, I think he was like, on one hand, he's like, that's not okay. But on the other, he's like, bad. Like, maybe we do have something we can work with here. And by the way, I am that basic bitch who was 100% shipping
of course
Torvin and Sappa because I can think of no more romantic Catachan first date than helping your date saw off the head of an orc with the knife that you gave them, or you kind of allowed them to pick up. Anyways, important right now.
Wow. That's
romance. And then when they blew that building together, I mean, they're getting married. Let's be real. Like, it was so funny because we were reading that scene and my husband and I were both laughing with her, like, helping him saw the head off. And I was like, oh, these two are together now. And he was like, dude, got that bitch an orc. Bitches love orcs. Bitches do love orc heads.
No.
Just saying.
Maybe those bitches do, but no.
Those are the ones he's chasing now. No, I That seemed just so much fun. But you're right. They were all kind of in their own little way trying to show him the ropes. And because on one hand, they didn't like him and he was kind of useless to them, but they also kind of needed him to not give away their position.
Right.
And I don't think they necessarily were invested in his survival per se, so much as their own.
Right. Like they didn't, they're going to make sure that he didn't die on their account, but they weren't going to go out of their way to protect him either.
Exactly.
But like as Adeline said, he's like, don't you get my men killed. It's like the big thing.
Exactly. Did you like Torvin? Were you invested in his story at all?
I was invested in him. It's hard to say if I liked him or not. I pitied him mostly. I mean, yes, he was drafted and these things happened, but at the same time, I felt for him. I mean, he was supposed to get married. He had a plan, and it's like Hunger Games. The odds were not in his favor. His number was drawn, and
right.
so he gets to forget your plans. You now have to go and fight in the Hunger Games. Not too unlike a good. That's not too crazy of an analogy, actually. But he was missing home. He was missing his fiance. He was not meant for this. He was on Scotty. They're not born with machetes. So.
Well, and they also, like, I felt extra bad for him, oddly, because we always talk about how life in the Imperium sucks, yo.
Yep.
It is not good. It is not fun. And he arguably had a pretty cush life. He was a scribe. So he's not aristocracy, but he's also not toiling in the underhive.
Right.
He's very much middle class, if they have such a thing in the... Right? Like
he was going to have a job in the administratum, and not one where he had to, like, sleep in the administratum and count books and eat paste.
Right. Exactly. Like, he actually had it would have been a very dull existence, especially because I think they said, like, Skady was, like, not, like, super, like, it was just very middle ground. It wasn't, like, a really nutrient or resource-rich world, but it also wasn't, like, bottom tier. Like, he was just, everything about him was very middle of the road, and here you are, son. On a world with orcs. And
you like that freedom? Do you like that freedom?
Are you
freedom ain't free.
Yeah, exactly. Cost the $1.05. There's a dated reference that's still current in my brain. And it was fun to see him because, as you said, like, this isn't a guy who signed up, so arguably had a better chance because he was like, yes, I'm going into this knowingly. He was tithed. And again, you're a scribe.
Right.
There's in Double Eagle, there's a really great scene where there's this guy, everybody on the planet in Double Eagle are pilots because of the way their world is. Like, everything is toxic on the lower, like the oceans and stuff are toxic sludge basically, and they all live in these hives and they're all pilots. And at one point the guy's struggling and he's just like, I don't know if I'm going to be a pilot. And his commanding officer's like, what are you going to do for the God Emperor? Swim? And I felt that a lot with Torvin because the whole time I was thinking about his tithing, I was like, what is he going to do for the God Emperor? Write letters back home? Record battles out on the field? Like, it's just, I get the idea of tithing. I get the idea of drafting, but it's really cruel.
It kind of sucks
you're
that
safe. You're not.
That your planet, the only thing you have to tithe is people, right?
Yeah.
Much better to be an agro world in that aspect. At least you're not donating people, you're just donating your food. Which maybe that is not so great because now I'm thinking of A Bug's Life where they had to tithe their food,
They come, they eat, they leave. They come, they eat, they leave.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. But I guess it just goes to show that in the Imperium, even if you think you're safe, you are not safe. I promise you there is some horrible fate out there awaiting you. Like tithing.
Unless you're a High Lord of Terra, I guess.
I did really like his arc, though. At first I was kind of like at first I was like, oh, this is interesting because we're getting to see what it's like to really have no idea what the Imperium is like. Like I really
Right.
loved the part where he was like, yeah, if they hadn't told me, I like I'm still kind of convinced this is an elaborate ruse. I'm still on my planet somewhere.
Right.
Right? So like that was like, oh, okay. And then as whiny as he got for a while there, I was like, God, I hope he dies. And then it turned around. It was actually that scene where he's talking with Sappa when he's like, I expected to feel something. Like horror at what I've done
Mm-hmm.
or, elation. I feel nothing. And she's like, oh, that's good. That's a good sign. And he's like, but then what separates us from the orcs? And she's like, now you're getting it. And like walks away. And he's just like, huh. That's when he again grew back on me.
Right.
I really did like him.
I just felt bad for him. And I totally understood him being whiny, especially when he did nothing wrong. He was following orders. The goddamn commissar has got in her head, like, oh, he's a coward.
So you can see now, like, because I feel like a lot of the books that we've read with commissars, by and large, they've been pretty cool people. Or they've been like allies or heroes, or like I'm thinking about, oh shoot, what's her name? Severina Rain, right? Like, yes, dirty job, but fair. And this lady she was a traditional commissar where, oh, why are you back here? Well, because my commanding officer sent me. Oh, so you ran. Well, because somebody had to get you the message. Cowardice.
Right. Like, why didn't you send us a message? We couldn't because the orcs got to the armory.
Magnetic field that's preventing any type
Oh,
of
or the top of the flares, they're
communications.
like, we couldn't get there. Like, the orcs were
Right.
already in the armory. Huh. So you
Weird.
ran instead of sacrificing yourself to light it. No, I was following orders. Hmm.
Yeah, that was the only part where I really felt bad for him because I was like, I was, I was kind of hoping that Aldelon was gonna have to deal with her
He
when he
almost,
storms in.
he almost kind of did.
He almost kind of did. Yeah, I mean, there was definitely a threat in that whole scene, right? When she's like, "Excuse you," and he's just like, "I'm already out for blood. You want to go too?"
Right. Well, really, like when you did the calculations when the ferals came and they're like, there's thousands of them. There is no way nobody knew about this. And he didn't know who was in on it.
Right. I did. Um. Well, let's get there in a sec, because we need to talk about Nogrok. He was Propagunnan,
He was
but
propaganda.
does that make him a good antagonist?
I, I,
It was great.
I mean, I enjoyed him, but I
I
want to see him get killed too.
Oh, very much so. And we'll talk more about that in a second. Um, I loved him as an antagonist because one of the themes that we're starting to see in some of the orc stories is the only thing worse than an orc is a cunning orc. Um, Obviously they have Mork and Gork, but they are definitely more Gork heavy and less
Mm-hmm.
Mork heavy. And we really saw it. I mean, we saw a little bit of it in Brutal Cunning, which was so much fun,
Well, wasn't that
right?
the
Where
whole
there,
point of brutal about Nazgul Thraka was that he was very even in the Gork and Mork, and that's why everyone kind of followed him.
and we saw what a real danger it was when you have an orc that thinks. And it's not that they're incapable of thinking, it's just not as common for them, and they definitely don't value it.
Right.
But this book really hit on that, and it is one of my favorite themes that we're starting to see with the orcs is this idea that you don't want these things thinking. So, did you like his story, his rise to war boss?
Yes.
It was awesome.
It was pretty awesome. Honestly, probably my favorite interaction that he had with Gutstampa was when Gutstampa was, it's like, why aren't you down there celebrating with all of us? And he's like, because we're keeping watch. And he's like, well, what is there to keep watch of? And he's like, because we've lost most of our orcs. Like, there's loads and loads down there. And he's like, there ain't loads, that's heaps. And then after Nogrok leaves and he turns to Jagged Teeth and he's like, is that loads or heaps down there?
Well, it's after Jagged Teeth punches him and knocks him out right before he loses consciousness when he's like, do you suppose that's heaps or loads?
I love there's a distinction between
well, because if
that.
you remember in the Gozgul Thraka book, they would often be like, oh, now there's mini orcs, but now there's mini orcs. And then they were like, oh, that's like many times like a lot. Like their math system.
I know, it was just so funny. That ain't loads, that's heaps. He's like, do you reckon that's heaps or loads?
I suddenly want like a translation. What is the difference between heaps and loads? And I have to imagine it's the difference between a shit ton and a metric shit ton.
Or I was gonna say a shit ton and a fuck ton, but there you go.
That works too. A metric. Well, then but then you also have degrees of that because then you have a metric shit ton, a metric fuck ton. Like, but I kind of want I need some numerical. Like, I need to understand the difference between heaps and loads.
Maybe it's the difference between a ton, Ton, and ton, Tonnne.
Could be. Could be. All of the dialogue there was great, but I loved how kind of like Torvin, he was doggedly persistent, right? That like, I can do this. People, like he got knocked down, but he got up again. They were never going to keep him down.
I didn't see that coming.
I was about to say that exact phrase and then that dawned on me. But yeah, he kept getting knocked down and he kept getting back up, right? Of this like, nope, my way is the better way, and my way, the commandos. And it's funny to me because the commandos, I love like the figures you see on the tabletop and a lot of the memes with like the commandos where they're holding a poster of an Astartes and they're hiding behind it, or like a trash can that they're walking with. But this is actually terrifying.
Yeah.
What does he do now?
Well, just the whole idea of them with camouflage and tracking where their camp was. That's scary. Yes. And that obviously totally, threw them off as well, because they're like, not only did they find us, but they surrounded us, which means that they knew exactly where we were. Crazy.
Again, the only thing worse than an orc is a cunning orc. Because, and I did like that even Audelon was like, these things don't think. That one with the mismatched eyes and the camouflage was clearly an outlier. Like, that guy, there's something weird about him, but he's clearly alone. There's not loads of these guys, or heaps.
Well, there really wasn't. It was just a little...
There really wasn't. But just enough to be effective.
Well, if you think about it, even like if you play video games, right, and you're going to be sneaky and stealthy, do you need a whole lot of people to cause chaos if you're playing like a stealthy route? No.
I did love, I think I marked the page. I loved when he was explaining what they had to do, and they were just like, okay, well, when do we yell wah? And yeah, I did. It's on page 218.
Oh, right. I know exactly what you're talking about.
That whole interaction is amazing.
He's like, well, but we don't. Well, how are they going to know that orcs is best? They're going to know.
Exactly. If we don't yell wah, how do they know the humies know they is about to get crumped? How do they know orcs is best? That, again, orc logic cracks me up when they're just like, but what? And then, of course, they yell too early, and he's just like, ya gets. Which, again, it's just fun.
Yeah.
Did you see the twist coming? The feral orcs that, the planetary governor definitely knew about.
No. I mean, so they kept talking about, reinforcements. So that's what I kept, waiting for, like, other members of this tribe or clan or whatever the hell, more death skulls coming in. No, I wasn't counting on or expecting feral orcs. Obviously, Nogrok wasn't either, because he was like, oh, this is a different problem.
Right? But he was also, as soon as the feral orcs show up, he's like, I can use this. This is to my advantage. It was one of those things that I did like, because it is one of those things that you have to be a little bit more familiar with orcs to, like, because as soon as they mentioned him, I was like, oh, shit, I forgot that's a thing. I forgot feral orcs are a thing. And the idea that a planetary governor would just not mention them, because, as Aldelon says, because money.
Right.
Just did not even think to mention this.
First, I thought it was out of fear that they're going to get the exterminatus treatment.
Oh, right.
Well, because, we got a serious infestation here. Apparently there's an area where the fungus just doesn't die. That's literally, like, why there's so many feral orcs. Best way to stop that is with fire. Let's be real. Or a virus that eats everything. But, a little bit of both. I thought it was that until they started doing the money. I was like, okay, now that's just even worse. I thought it was like maybe you were just afraid of your people, or even like maybe your own life, but it's about money. Okay.
The most cowardly of cowardly reasons, right? Just absolute repugnant. Just, oh, well, we're just not that big of a planet. And really? And, like, I honestly think that in that moment, had he said, like, given that, if he laid out those things, like, look, my people, we can't sacrifice our entire planet just to get rid of these things because the Imperium can't be bothered to come save us. I think maybe Aldelon and the Commissar might have been like, pathetic, but okay. Understood. But just good old-fashioned greed.
Oh,
jerk.
But don't we see that so often, though, with these planetary governors? Like, it's so rare that we actually have a governor that's like, okay, put me on the front line. Like, what can I do to help? And yeah, it's generally, but my things and my stuff.
Exactly.
And my food.
And I don't want the Inquisition looking at me.
Oh, God, that was so great when he's like, the Inquisition can't come. Oh, it's too late.
Oh, that's... Okay, so I really hated that Commissar until that moment. Because she's one of the quote-unquote bad Commissars because she's definitely trigger-happy. But fair. Since... I kind of expected her to be like, well, we can't do that to the planetary governor. Oh, no. Nope, she's just like, okay, so this needs further investigation now. And I like to imagine that she said it in the same tone of, you done fucked up, Ron?
Right?
Like, if you had just been honest, maybe we could have done something. But now we have the Inquisition involved.
Yeah, I just love when Adelon, like, attacked him and she starts attacking Adelon. He was just like, just give me, like, 1 minute. And if you have a problem with this, then I will stop. And then he does his explanation. The guy admits it. And he looks at Commissar and she's like, yeah, okay. You're right.
I did like when Nilum is like, wait, what? And Aldelon's, okay, so he wasn't in on this too. Because you know that Aldelon was like fully prepared to have to deal with both of them.
And possibly the Commissar too.
Yes. Like, he went in there prepared to wipe out that entire room.
And he could have.
Good news, he only had to take out the governor. And even then, he doesn't take him out, per se.
No.
He just, makes him shit himself.
Well, to be fair, I think most people would when they know the Inquisition's now going to come for them. I'm going to talk about some trigger-happy people.
I know I reference this a lot, but it remains one of my all-time... Right. it remains one of my all-time favorite scenes, and it's in that Brothers of the Snake, and it's when the Adeptus Astartes is trying to get this woman, she's a princess, he's trying to get her to comply, and she's like, no, fuck you, and she shoots him, and then all of a
So
sudden
I'm sure
the
he was just
Inquisitor,
like, the hell?
yeah, he's like, what? And the Inquisitor shows up, and she runs screaming in the other direction, and the Astartes is like, okay, yep, that happened. I got shot, runs screaming from the Inquisition. We see where the real power is here. And like, he's not bitter about it. He's just like, okay.
Maybe I need my own rosette.
Right, exactly. And but I've always really liked that because it does drive home. Like, you've got a Catachan choking you out with a power fist, but what the real sphere is the Inquisition. Like,
Honestly, like,
yeah.
I'm kind of with him on that.
Kind of am too, honestly. At least the Catachan death would be quick.
Yeah.
He'll just snap your neck.
No, the Inquisition, you're talking about months, years of just torture.
And let's not even talk about what they're going to do to your planet. Stupid.
Even if you were worried about Exterminatus first, it's pretty much over now.
There's also similarly with and I think people will know what I'm talking about. I think it's his last command. It's one of the Gaunt's Ghost books. They go back to Gurion, and the Inquisition is there, and they start processing people, and of course Gaunt is like, what are you doing? And the Inquisitor's like, we are a blunt instrument. It's one of those phrases that always stuck with me. It was very classic peak Abnet. So what happens next? Let me ask you this. Were you satisfied with the ending?
No.
I wasn't either. It felt like...
I don't want them to go back out again to most likely die. All that for nothing? I guess
right.
The life of the guard, I guess, but...
It was. And I guess I have to remind myself of that. Oh, shit, now that you say it like that. So, one of the things I really liked about Steel Tread was that she never gets to have a conversation with the big bad. She never gets to hear his soliloquy, right? He never monologues at her. She never even really confronts him. She's just a rank and file soldier who is part of what kills the big bad, but beyond that, she doesn't know. I guess in some ways this is very similar, because I was actually really disappointed, because I was like, you revealed this twist, this traitor, and now what? Now, nothing? But when you say it like that, yeah, like, okay, I caught the planetary governor doing some bullshit, and back out to fight again. Are we going to get reinforcements? Maybe. According to the in transmission, it's their 8th request.
Yeah, the Imperium seems really efficient.
Very efficient. Although when you think about, again, just untold worlds screaming, like, I would love to see their prioritization logic.
So the kids they found Futurama on Hulu. And so they've been watching some. And there's this one episode where Hermes is having a visit from the bureaucracy, and he's tidying everything up. So she comes, and for them to shake hands, they're signing forms in triplicate and stamping and switching things around, and then they're able to shake hands. First of all, I was like, wow, our own government's not that far from it, as I was prepping all the paperwork for my kids' passports. But secondly, I'm like, this is the administratum. This is how I imagine to shake.
100% the administratum.
Like, before we shake hands, we got to do all these forms in triplicate and stamped and approved and stapled.
Oh yeah, it is not efficient. And by the way, if you want a really messed up story that I highly, highly recommend, there is a short story audio drama. It's by Alec Worley, who does phenomenal audio dramas, but it's called A Watcher in the Rain. It is basically, the horror story is bureaucracy. That's it.
I mean, that is a pretty good horror story, to be fair.
Oh, you know nothing, Jon Snow.
The red tape. The red tape.
I can't say anything else because it gives it away, but oh my god, highly recommend. It is so well done, and I love the woman who voices the main character. She's phenomenal. But Bureaucracy, the horror book, highly recommend. But I guess when you word it like that, yeah, it is. It's just like, all right, we rooted that out and back out there. Back out there and start killing. Because their job isn't done. They don't get to just... And like Audilon says earlier, he's like, there's no retirement for a jungle fighter.
Right.
Your retirement is when you die in the service of the Emperor. So
I know, but I was just hoping that since now Torvin was like an honorary jungle fighter, that maybe he'd get a minute to send a letter to Melina. But by the way, I'm officially a badass.
I met someone new. We killed an orc together. I got a bandana. That scene when he gives him the bandana was like, the dad approves of this union.
You're awful. I do not want to read this next book with you. I really don't.
But so final question. Like, what happens next for the 56th, the 57th? Do you think they get off world? Do you think they
No, I think they all died.
I hate to agree with you, but I think you're right.
I mean, there's just too many of the feral orcs. I mean, there's a lot they can do, as the jungle fighters, but at the same, I mean, they can do another mind trap probably very, very easily with the ferals. But, I mean, because they got to get to the ferals before Nogrok comes back, obviously, and, like, trains them.
I was going to say, the feral orcs, the thing about them is that they mostly are feral because there's the lack of a war boss or a knob or anything like that. Like,
they have no one to teach them.
Exactly. So you do not want Nogrok stewing out in the jungle. And like the thing about it is that with Orc Society, really all he has to do, get a couple, like maybe like several dozen of the ferals, and then a few dozen more, and a few dozen more, and before you know it, you're gonna have not feral orcs, or you're going to have a combination of a tide of ferals. And when you think about that, it's kind of like the Imperium, right? Like, oh, you have the Catachan who are very, very skilled and dangerous, and then all this cannon fodder that we just kind of throw at people.
Right.
Like
so
the
Catachan are going to figure out a way to keep destroy all the ferals. And I don't think, where there's 13 of them left. Yes, they're really good at what they do, but, going back to A Bug's Life, and the grasshopper's like, it's just a bunch of ants. What does it matter? And Hopper takes one of the seeds and throws it at them. He's like, does that hurt? And he goes, no. So then he unleashes the whole grain thing and it kills them. It's like, does that hurt? That's like what the ants are. And that's like what the orcs are. They're army ants just ready to run over. And you can have as many people to stomp on them as you wish. But eventually you're going to be taken over. That's how piranha work. It's how the army ants have always worked, the massive...
That's how Africanized bees work.
Yes, exactly.
Exactly. If you've ever seen those like in the wild, it's terrifying.
Oh, I've seen
it moves
video.
like a cloud.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, thank you. Yeah, exactly. Some of nature's most effective killers just kill through sheer numbers.
Mm-hmm.
I draw your attention to the Japanese honeybee, aka one of the most metal insects.
Oh, how they kill the murder hornets, which is great.
It was amazing. For people who don't know, they literally, like a bunch of them will get into a ball around a murder hornet and kind of trap them like that. And they vibrate their wings. Murder hornets can live at like 97 degrees, and the honeybees die at 9 degrees. So they bring the heat up to 8 degrees.
Yeah, it's like perfect.
Just hot enough to kill the hornet, but not kill themselves. It's so metal. Kind of admire them.
Yeah, anyways. There's a cool YouTube video out there if you guys really, really want to see it in action, like what they do, because you can see it. It's a coordinated attack. When the murder hornet works its way into the hive. It's crazy.
It is wild.
But
The
again,
Oatmeal also did a thing on it.
yeah, and that's how I first found out about it was with this comic. But he links to a video that
Yep.
shows it in action. It's really really cool.
Fascinating.
But
Which is
yeah,
kind of how the humans kill the Astartes, because that's in the most recent Siege of Terra novel. They basically Brady friggin' Keeler basically sets up the Imperial doctrine, or Imperial dogma, where she's like, look, it takes something like 100 human beings to kill one Astartes. Well, guess what? We've got human beings for days.
well,
And so they just throw them.
It's true. I mean, that's something that I've, always thought, you just got to get enough of them. They can take one down. It may take them a while, but they can still take one down. So it's the same thing with these feral orcs. I don't think any of these people survive, and that just makes me very sad.
It makes me very sad too. But it's also kind of the life of the guard, right?
Yeah.
It sucks.
But
Nobody wants to be in the guard.
But honestly, like with the orcs, like you just can't throw guard at the orcs and take care of it. It's got to bring in at least one squad of Astartes. It's just, you have to have that big of something to come in and stomp them out.
But didn't want to send resources to this planet before the feral orcs were discovered. I can't imagine when it's like, oh, by the way, they were lying about having feral orcs. And not lying, they were just obfuscating the feral orcs. And this planet kind of sucks and doesn't really have anything. And the governor's corrupt. And there's thousands of feral orcs.
Right. I mean,
I don't know if the Imperium's just like, whew, Godspeed.
Well, and they probably are. I mean, as I recently put in the first Space Marine game, and I hadn't played it since it originally came out, and obviously I know more about the Imperium and everything now. So at the very beginning of the game, there's that distress signal about the orc invasion, and it goes through reasons to save this planet, and because of that, there's a certain manufactorum with a certain Titan unit. They're like, okay, we'll go in and save. And I was like, and at first, and at the time, probably just went right over my head. Actually, I know it did, but now I'm just like, sons of bitches. That's awful.
As I said, I want to see the prioritization logic.
Yeah.
I want to see that. And it actually goes back to, despite us not liking that book at all, and it was by Andy Clark, unfortunately. It was the one with the
Gate of
Imperial
Bones?
Fist. No.
Oh,
we liked that one. Okay.
the Imperial
The
Librarian?
Imperial Fist. Yes, the librarian, the Primaris
Yeah.
librarian.
I forget what it's called.
When
but yeah.
everyone's just like, you're getting us off the planet, right? And he's like, no. We're here because you make XYZ. Sorry, Charlie. Oh man! I would love to see the prioritization logic that goes through of, do we help? What do they make?
I wouldn't be surprised with some magic 8-ball.
Yeah. Outlook, not so good.
Manufactorum. We're there.
Right? That South Park with the economy. Complete with kazoo.
That's right.
That's just what I like to imagine. But I'm actually a little excited because this is our, third Imperial Guard novel that we've read this year. Really fun, but
Steel Tread,
yeah.
Volpone Glory, yes. Krieg, and now Catachan.
Forgot about Volpone Glory. You're absolutely correct. So fourth Imperial Guard novel. So I'm really excited to get into just good old political intrigue with our man, Robert Rath, Assassinorum Kingmaker.
Political intrigue.
Look.
So we got
expectations are high.
We got a Vindicary and a Calydus.
Yes.
Is that what that is? A Calydus? Okay.
Yes. And yes, I'm already shipping them.
I know you are. Shut up.
But I put that on Twitter and Robert Rath replied. It was basically like, a lot of people are going to be. And I was like, oh, you mad lad. You did that on purpose. But expectations are very high. After The Infinite and the Divine, and after some of his short stories, I'm very excited for this book. I think it's going to be hope it's going to be a lot of fun.
Well, we don't get to read very much about the Officio Assassinorum either.
No. In fact,
I mean, we did in Gate of Bones. No, not Gate of Bones. It was
Watchers of the Throne 2.
Yes, that
Electric
one.
Boogaloo.
Yes.
I think that actually might be the only book we've read where they featured prominently.
Yes.
No, and it's really
me,
just in the Deus Ex Machina.
For me personally, I read Nemesis from Horus Heresy, which was all about like what the best of all of the Officio Assassinorum trying to get together and kill Horus. And by the way, they all fail miserably. But
the Calydus, there's a really great short story by ADB about the Calydus Assassin. Oh my God, Makar? No.
You know, we had another one, but the Calydus in Spears of the Emperor.
Oh, did we ever? The scene that you had to read twice because you're like, what just happened?
Yeah.
Who made his head fell forward? Calydus. I'm so excited. They're so much fun. I like my shapeshifters. They're awesome. And did I mention they wield Necron phase blades? Come on.
See, after Nemesis, I really like the Vindicary.
I'm very excited for that. Oh, there was a hammer and bolter with an with a Calydus
and a Vindicary. Yeah.
Yes.
I wonder if it's the same people. That'd be kind of fun.
That would actually be badass because those two were definitely together in my mind too.
Of course they were.
Gotta look for romance everywhere you go, my friends.
And yet you hate rom-coms. It's so weird.
I hate them with a passion. I don't feel the need to explain my idiosyncrasies. You want to take us out, Carrie?
On that note, I guess I will. Jeez. She's like, I don't explain myself to you. Well, fine.
Right, I'm out. Peace.
But you've all listened to the Warhammer 40k Book Club episode regarding Katachan Devil by Justin Woolley. Be sure to join us next time for Assassinorum Kingmaker by Robert Rath. We are an unofficial book club, not affiliated with the Black Library or any of its affiliates. You can find both the vidcast and podcast on our website, WH40kbookclub.com. If you like this episode, please like, subscribe, give a review, and all those good things to the vidcast on YouTube or the podcast anywhere you get podcasts. Our site also has articles about our adventures in reading other Warhammer 40k books and short stories outside of the book club books. So please stay a while and read from a crack. Yeah, I'm still off Farius. I even have the mug to prove it.
You. Some red. Preferably with the marker from Dead Space on top of it.
What happened to your chartreuse?
Chartreuse is currently being moved around because I started doing my bookcases and then I got a little distracted. So, Martian red it is.
All right, well, good night, everybody.
Like that box set. Good night.